What is the book of Exodus about? Many readers of Exodus assume that the book is about, well, the Exodus, Israel's liberation from Egypt, Pharaoh's army drowned in the Red Sea. But did you know that this part of the story takes up only a little more than 1/3 of the book? What is Exodus really all about? The Exodus matters because its role in the whole of cosmic history. Genesis tells us that God made the world as a palace or temple to live in, and he made human beings to be his princes in extending his life, glory, and presence out to the world. But our first parents, in their sin, were expelled from the Garden of Eden, the place where God's presence was focused, and in losing access to God's direct presence, a catastrophe engulfed the whole creation. The world was meant to be a dwelling place for God, but it was always human beings who were called to be God's hand and feet in making this a reality. To really understand any book, one should look at its beginning and then at its ending. The beginning of Exodus tells us how the Israelites, God's special people, multiplied in Egypt and became a great nation, but were reduced to slavery. But what were they doing in slavery? They were forced to build store cities for Pharaoh. One of those cities was called Pi Atum, which is Egyptian for House of Atum, one of Egypt's many idols. We are also told several times in Exodus that the Israelites were forced to make special burned bricks for their work. And the last time that word was used in the Bible was in Genesis 11, which describes how mankind, after the flood, burned bricks to build the tower and city of Babel. The descendants of Abraham were chosen to magnify the name of God and bless the nations. But here, they have become slaves of the nations, and instead forced to build a new Babel, houses to magnify the names of Egypt's idol. When Israel is freed from Egypt, they don't stop building things. Instead, Exodus ends with Israel successfully building the tabernacle and God himself filling it up with his own glory and presence. The tabernacle is the place where God lives with and talks with mankind. When Israel leaves Egypt, they go to Mount Sinai. And on Sinai, God comes closer to any human being than he has come since before the fall. His presence descends before the eyes of the whole nation. And more than that, he begins to dwell in a permanent house in the midst of this nation. And more than that, he gives Israel the ability to actually be the ones who build that house. Israel no longer serves Pharaoh to build houses for his idols. They serve God, and they become God's princes who build a house where God draws near to the whole world. The book of Exodus isn't just a story about slavery and liberation. It's a story of how God utterly refuses to abandon mankind to death and destruction. And it's a story of how God begins to fulfill his purpose of drawing near to the world and drawing the world into himself. Christians say that Jesus is the new Moses who brings the new Exodus. That is because Jesus is both God and man. He is the reality which the tabernacle prefigured. Israel met God through a veil in the tabernacle, but we meet the same God face to face in Jesus Christ, in whom God's glory is perfectly radiant.